too. Okay, so again, Harvey Mills is the South Bend Fraternal Order of Police president. I want to start off with the FOP's position on what happened with the Eric Logan, Ryan O'Neal case. Let's just start off there, and then we'll dovetail into what's been happening with the mayor versus the police department, the morale issue, the exodus, and all of that. So let's just start with the actual night of the shooting and what set this entire thing off. What happened that night?
Sure. So Sergeant O'Neal was responding to a low priority call of a suspicious person that was reportedly breaking into cars down near Central High Apartments. Officer O'Neal entered the parking lot of Central High Apartments and began looking with his lights to find if he could see any suspects or subjects looking at cars. He came across, he saw a door open and parked his car and saw, just the legs of someone sticking out of the car. So he got out of his car and began approaching the male and asked if he owned the car. The person then stood up, and while doing so, Officer O'Neal then saw a purse, hanging out of his sweatshirt pocket, and also saw that his hand was bloody from some injury. The male said that the car was his, but then stood up and began walking toward Sergeant O'Neal with an 8-inch hunting knife held above his head. Officer O'Neal then reacted the only way he could within, I think it's a 7 or 8 foot distance between the two of them, and he defended himself.
And of course, I always like to point this out because when we have police shootings and officers, fire multiple rounds or they empty their magazines, one of the questions that comes up and the criticisms that comes up is, why did you have to fire so many times? Why couldn't you just fire once or twice and then end it? And Sergeant O'Neal did. He only fired 2 times and he missed once, correct? And he hit him center mass the other time, and that was unfortunately a fatal wound.
That's right. Eric Logan was really shot one time, but Officer O'Neal fired 2 shots, I believe. But yeah, so we're trained to only fire if, at necessary, obviously, and then only until the threat stops.
And again, there was no backup there, so using a less lethal option is not the right course of action, because if that fails, then the officer is in serious jeopardy of his life.
That's right. There's plenty of training. We train quite frequently on, you may have heard of the 21-foot rule.
Correct.
If the suspect's within 21 feet of you holding the knife, you can't draw your weapon faster than he can get to you with the knife. Yeah,
it's and for people who don't know that, they need to go look that up. I know that we've talked about it quite a bit on the program, but there's plenty of videos with professionals kind of explaining this and showing it.
There's a video on our FOP webpage as well.
Awesome. Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, we have, I believe, somebody identified the knife as being theirs and that it was stolen from their vehicle. Is that correct?
That's what I understand.
Okay, so we now have a call to law enforcement of somebody breaking into vehicles. We have Officer O'Neal arriving on scene, finding somebody matching that description. That person is bloody, has a purse in one of their pockets, which obviously does not belong to them, and now has an 8-inch hunting knife that has been identified as being stolen from one of those vehicles. And that person had the knife raised above their head and approached Officer O'Neal before he drew his weapon and fired 2 shots in a controlled fashion. Certainly was not panicked. So now you got the mayor of South Bend, Pete Buttigieg, who's running for president of the United States, just in case anybody hasn't heard about that. And he flies all the way back. He cancels an event with the Democratic National Committee. He flies all the way back to South Bend. And now he's doing this media tour, Harvey, where he's basically saying that all policing and the criminal justice system as a whole are now rooted in racism. And he's speaking in front of new graduates, and he's lecturing them on racial tensions and how to appropriately conduct yourself as an officer. And none of those people have done anything wrong. Kind of tell everybody, that's when the FOP started, pushing back on this. So kind of walk us down that lane as well.
Yeah, sure. So those comments have raised tension throughout our police department and with the community as well. Officers have actually been shot at. 10 different officers have been shot at since that night of the shooting, or since the mayor's made those comments. And that's
not really covered a lot here, is it? Yeah. So since that's not covered a lot here. So since the mayor came back and made these comments, 10 times officers have been shot at.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we see what's happening in New York, in Atlanta, in Harlem, where they're now assaulting officers with buckets of water and squirt guns.
Ohio.
Correct. Yeah, it's starting to spread. I wrote an article a few years ago when the tragedy happened in Dallas, where police were targeted. And I cited a bunch of research from the FBI and numerous academic institutions, which showed that rhetoric from politicians, community activists, and even the media were leading to violence against police officers. And it seems to be that since the mayor came back and was on this media tour about all of this, that seems to be playing out in the city limits of South Bend as well.
Yeah, that's my belief too. That number, 10 officers being shot at, is certainly higher than ever before in this shortest time span. Officers put their lives on the line every single day, and more day in, day out. And that's just not something they need to be looking forward to coming to work. Obviously, we deal with trauma and traumatic events daily as well. So, we don't need our mayor, our city administration, basically, calling us names. It's the way we feel about it.
Sure. So, Harvey, do you have a few more minutes? I have a commercial break that I have to take right now. I hope you can stick with us and continue on for another segment. Can you do that?
Sure. Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put you on hold and take a quick timeout, pay some bills. We'll be back with the president of the South Bend Fraternal Order of Police, Harvey Mills, coming up on 95.3 MNC.